In our first ever episode about a year ago, Graydon, we did Formula One drivers as NBA players, but this is the remix. Formula One constructor teams as NBA teams. We'll go through all 10 teams on the grid, and we will give their NBA counterparts, from maybe like a legacy standpoint, a personnel standpoint, and certainly from a vibes standpoint. I'll get us started. My first team, number one in the standings. Not number one in most people's hearts, I would say. Red Bull. Red Bull Racing. Their NBA equivalent to me is the Golden State Warriors. I will say it's not a 100% perfect match, but both teams, defending champions. Both teams would consider themselves light years ahead of the competition.
Okay.
Max Verstappen, Stephen Curry, two of the greatest talents in their each individual sports. Their personalities, they don't necessarily line up together, though I do know that Steph likes to call himself the petty king. And Max Verstappen, he's been known to be petty in the past. I would also argue that Checo Perez is the Klay Thompson of Red Bull Racing. He plays both sides of the ball.
Yeah, he's a defender.
He's an aggressive driver. He's a defensive driver. He's generally well-liked. And obviously, Christian Horner is Draymond Green, the driving force of personality behind the team, and a vivacious trash talker.
Okay, I get it. When you went into that, I was like, what are you talking about? Other than the champion, other than the title.
Sure,
I get like the most recent title, but I was like, I don't get it. But now I think I get it.
Yeah, you're thinking the Warriors are too well liked, aren't you?
I don't know. You know what I was thinking is that I would have compared the Warriors to a different team.
Well, I guess we're going to compare every team to the
Warriors. Well, we're going to go. They're all 10 teams. How are all 10 F1 teams like the Warriors in their own way?
I actually like that. We've changed the segment completely.
I get it. No, that's good. I don't know if I have an alternate there.
It's tough.
Maybe it's tough. I was going to go with something like it's for this exact era, for this exact moment, because I feel like there's like maybe they're more like the Miami Heat or something like that, like savvy, perennially competitive, have had eras of great dominance.
All right, I like
something like that. That's what I was going to go with, but I like how you came up.
I would definitely accept Miami Heat. I would probably think more like, LeBron James era 2011 to 2014 Miami Heat.
Yeah, that's the problem. Is it's you have to contextualize it.
That's fair as well, though. All right, let's move on. Ferrari, what you got?
Okay, so for me, I'm thinking
the Warriors.
The Warriors, and why? But why the Warriors? No. So I was thinking you've got a team that is an iconic. One of the iconic franchises in the league, kind of one of the team that is so deeply associated with the sport itself, a team that used to be one of the most dominant teams of all time, and in recent years, at least very recently, has been a contender, but kind of a poser contender. I went with the Boston Celtics.
I love it.
So that like somebody who's knocking on the door, but honestly can't really put it together and hasn't been able to pull in a title, despite the fact that everybody thought they had all the pieces in place to win a title, kind of is falling apart when push comes to shove. And then for me, it's really I feel like there's only really one other that you compare them to, and they're kind of the Celtics or they're the Lakers.
Sure.
Which is like the iconic teams, and then also the Lakers kind of tendency towards being a bit of a train wreck in recent years feels relevant.
Yeah, definitely true. I actually love the Celtics, and I think it is certainly timely as well, with the Celtics going to the finals and coming up short against the Warriors, who are Red Bull. You got to lose before you can win. We saw it with every champion out there. Even Michael Jordan lost in the playoffs back in the day. So Celtics is a great one. They got a great young star in Jason Tatum. I guess he's the Charles Leclerc of the Boston Celtics. And Carlos Sainz, he makes a nice Jaylen Brown as well. right? You're like definitely the second guy, but a great second guy to have.
Great second guy to have, and like Jaylen Brown's super talented, but like also most talented guy who can't really dribble. You know, it's like you know, Carlos Sainz, like super talented, but most talented guy who like kind of can't help but drive around in the gravel all race. It's like that. You know, it feels
nice.
Feels relevant.
Jalen and Jason, similar names.
Wow.
Carlos and Charles, similar names.
I mean, this is lining up. I am not gonna. They only get worse from here and clunkier from here.
Yeah, it gets a lot harder.
It's in the end of it.
Harder
The bottom of the standings was a lot harder than the top.
Here's a tough one for me. Mercedes, the Silver Arrows. I kind of wanted them to compare them to the Lakers. We saw that a lot early in the season when
they were
Russell was out driving Hamilton. It looked like they were a championship team that had completely fallen off, even though they still got one of the better talents out there. But I ultimately settled on the Milwaukee Bucks. Lewis is Giannis Antetokounmpo, one of the best drivers, one of the best players out there. George Russell is both Chris Middleton and Jrue Holiday because he's a great second star, just like both those guys are. So to me, just like the Bucks, probably have the best player in the league. Mercedes has at least the second best driver on the grid, but they still have no chance at a title, just like the Bucks had no chance at a title last year due to injuries.
Okay, I like it. I get where you're going. This is the one I thought you were going to say, the Warriors.
Okay.
I get the Warriors came back and won the title this year, which screws up my analogy, but I was thinking it's like they had like a super dominant era during the 2010s in which they kind of, you know, in which they just were leaps and bounds ahead of other people, but not unchallengeable, and found themselves being beaten in super dramatic, unexpected fashion at some point along the way. But now, even in after that era, are still competitive, but probably not the same level of dominance as they once saw. That was going to be my
That's not bad.
My argument.
That's not bad. If George Russell was a little bit more smiley, he could be Andrew Wiggins, you know?
Yeah. No, I like that.
I don't know what that means, but he could.
I mean...
All right, moving on. P4 in the Constructors' Championship is Alpine right now. What you got, Graydon?
Okay. I thought there was a lot of different ways I could have gone with this one. But I'm going with the Brooklyn Nets, mostly because what have you got here? You've got a seemingly competitive team in which a two-time world champion is walking out the door on you, throwing everything into chaos.
I mean,
that's what I've got.
All right.
That's what I've got, and seen. I mean, I don't know if the comparison goes much beyond that, but it feels like a team that was on the verge of being confident, was on the verge of competing, and suddenly things are falling apart for it unexpectedly because of a star that's on his way out of town.
I think that's perfect. You like when I was on the Scuderia F1 podcast, they asked me what's something you would change about the coverage. I'm like, silly season could be even more crazy than it already is. If you look at the way the NBA does things,
yeah.
If F1 were able to blow the transfer portal open the way that the NBA does, it would be crazy.
Oh, you could like trade drivers?
Well, that's almost exactly what happened after I said it. It was like, you know, Fernando Alonso opts out. He's going to be going to Aston Martin, leaving the team completely floundering for what they're going to do, even though they're in the midst of supposedly a solid season for them. That to me is very NBA, to be making almost like a trade request, just being like, well, this team that I put together, it ain't for me anymore. And that's similar to what's happened with Alonso, coming back from a few years out, having some success, and then bouncing almost immediately. So I will willingly accept the Nets as a comparison for Alpine. And I'll also say, you know, Alpine, back when they were Renault, had a very cool color scheme. Black and yellow.
Yeah.
Very cool. Now they've gone to their French-looking color scheme, which is fine, but
they
kind of milk with toast.
They had my favorite... but one of my favorite liveries like designs, because depending on whether you were looking at it from the front or looking at the side, it looked all black or all yellow, which I thought was cool. It was like a cool effect. I thought that was nice. So.
All right, moving on. I got McLaren up next. I see some people in the Slipstream team saying you should compare them to the Suns color-wise. It makes sense. The way the Suns fell apart in the playoffs, it also makes sense. But I'm likening them to the Philadelphia 76ers. Because they've got one supreme talent. Both of these teams do. Joel Embiid for the Sixers, Lando Norris for McLaren, and then they've got another guy. That used to be Ben Simmons for the Sixers. He's a little bit of a Ricardo, like, what's going on out there?
What's going on?
But now it's Harden. An older guy who is maybe not at the peak of his skills right now. That's also Daniel Ricciardo. So the team is always relevant, and they might have a chance. but it ain't going to happen.
I like that because, Harden was never beloved the way Ricardo was beloved, but he is a big personality. Yeah. He is like a big personality who was a supreme talent, and that is seemingly going awry for him late in his career.
All right, so 76ers for McLaren as well. And I also think McLaren wants to be loved, just like Joel Embiid and the 76ers. They also want to be loved. They love the awards. Moving on down the list, Alfa Romeo. Who's your NBA comparison, Graydon? This one I thought was tough.
This was very tough, and I struggled with it a lot. I am going to go. But as I thought more about it, I decided that I was going to go with the Portland Trail Blazers. Okay. And the reason I went with the Blazers is because I threw a dart at the board and that's what came up. No, it's because I was kind of like, okay, classic team, one of the iconic kind of brands of the sport, and one that many decades ago was very competitive, but in more recent times kind of bounces along in relative mediocrity. Sure. Not towards the bottom, not towards the top, just kind of somewhere washing out in the middle. And that's probably actually a little bit harsh on the Blazers maybe, but felt like the Blazers are probably a little bit better on average than Alfa Romeo is in terms of how they do, but something about right for me. And I also feel like Valtteri is kind of a weird fan favorite the way Damian is.
Sure.
Like people do have outsized love for Valtteri.
Yeah, people want good things to happen for
partly
Bottas,
because
just like
he's
they
a
do with
second fiddle. I know Damian's the guy in Portland, but I think he's a second fiddle league-wide.
Yeah.
He's never like the man, a top 5 NBA player.
He's like the next best thing to Steph Curry.
And it feels like Valtteri has been chugging along for years now as like the second best thing behind an all-time great. It felt like there's something there.
That's really great. You actually hit on that. I was going Rockets. I was like, did I literally just...
that was a tough one. It was a tough one. These only get harder from here.
Yeah, exactly right. Up next for me, Haas. I think they're the Charlotte Hornets because everybody wants them to do well because we just like them. Like, we just like them for no reason.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Mick Schumacher is LaMelo Ball. Talented, and he's got the name recognition. Gunther Steiner is teal uniforms. Everybody loves the teal uniforms. Everybody loves Gunther. And Kevin Magnuson, I put down PJ Washington, but only because he's like a notable joke amongst no-dunks, the Chevy tracks of the NBA. So Kevin Magnuson, just a solid driver out there, has moments of greatness like PJ Washington hitting 6 threes in his first NBA game. Something like that.
Love it.
The Hornets, the Haas Hornets. Actually, sounds all right.
Okay, love it.
Who you got for AlphaTauri?
Okay, AlphaTauri, I'm going with the Oklahoma City Thunder for a couple reasons.
Okay.
First of all, a team that changed its name in somewhat recent history. Good. It used to be called something else. Now it's got a different team name. But also I feel like just like a perennial young guys team. It's just like always, like guys are always cycling through. Sure. Like it's always got this young crop of youth. It's whether it's Presti's pick hoarding or the fact that AlphaTauri is a feeder team for Red Bull. It feels like they just are kind of always on the younger edge of the league / series. So that's who I had there.
That's pretty solid, actually.
I don't know.
Because it kind of feels like similar to AlphaTauri. If you cut your teeth at OKC, eventually we'll get you on a better team. We'll get you to a good team where you can do some stuff.
OKC, obviously, OKC's peak as a franchise is much higher than AlphaTauri's peak. But AlphaTauri, lest we forget, has won races. They won races with Vettel. They won a race with Gasly. It's not as if they've never stood on the top step, which also to me felt, it's just been a few years now, since they had a generation where we have got the next generation of great drivers, because Vettel, Max, Carlos Sainz, so many incredible guys have driven there. So
I think that's great. P9 on the Constructors' Championship is Aston Martin, and this one was the most confusing for me. I don't know if they're the Knicks or if they're the Kings. They could be the Knicks because they had one random good season.
Yeah.
You know, they just had that one pink Mercedes season where they finished very high up. They've got a lot of nepotism, is getting one of their drivers a spot. And then they've got an old guy, Sebastian Vettel, alongside him. That's not dissimilar to the way the Knicks obtained Jalen Brunson. And, Tom Thibodeau loves to play old guys. They could also be the Kings because the Kings fool us every year. As soon as the Kings are eliminated from the playoffs, I feel like they go 8-0. As soon as there's no expectations, that's when the Kings are at their best. That's when Aston Martin was at their best. They've also got a young talent that I'm not totally convinced on. Lance Stroll for Aston Martin, De'Aaron Fox for the Kings, and then one former star, Sebastian Vettel / Domantas Sabonis. But I'll admit, neither
I
of those
like
are
the
perfect.
Knicks one more only because it feels like the sort of. This is a hard one.
Yeah.
But it does feel like there's a certain arrogance to the Knicks organization and front office, or that to me maps to Lawrence Stroll and his sort of belief that Aston Martin was just destined to compete for titles and would after they made all these upgrades. But honestly, those things have not borne fruit and it's been backsliding as an organization. That is a tricky one.
This is a good one. Good comment, though, from Andreas here in the Slipstream team. Aston Martin are the Clippers. They spend so much money but never win anything.
I mean, that's not wrong. That's not wrong.
It's not wrong. So good call on that one. P10, 3 points only on the season so far. Bring us home, Graydon. Who is Williams? If it's not OKC, I'm honestly kind of shocked here.
Okay, I wasn't going to say
Sure.
OKC. I wasn't going to say OKC. Well, I already said OKC.
They've been taken.
So, okay, I had two options here, and I'm going with, and it's, you know what? They're two appropriate options. It was either going to be Bulls or Spurs, but I'm going with Spurs. I'm going with Spurs because the Bulls are much better than the Spurs right now, and the Spurs, who are kind of in the middle of bottoming out, like a formerly great team, one of the iconic teams of the league, like a team that dominated an era, but is in the middle of fumbling its way through a transition and is currently bottoming out.
Yes,
it feels like they actually are. That's a little harsh to San Antonio, I think, who honestly has never reached kind of the bottom of the barrel the way Williams has. That's too harsh of a characterization. Maybe the Rockets having bottoming out is more fair, but I don't know. But I went with San Antonio. I was only gonna say the Bulls are too good to be Williams. I was only gonna say in the sense that when Williams was dominant, they were incredibly dominant, but now has had an era where they just are not as relevant. So that was where that was coming from, but I feel like that works for San Antonio as well.
Well, I'm glad the Bulls actually won some games last year because it would have been very depressing for you to be completely accurate on Williams and the Bulls being
if the Bulls had a bad season last year, it actually would have been a good comp.
Yeah, dominant back when TVs were super grainy. That's the last time anybody remembers them actually winning anything. Thank you to the Spurs for trading all of your guards and becoming Williams. That's our list of Formula One constructors as NBA teams. Let us know what you think down below. What did we miss? What did we get right? If you got any other comparisons, chuck them in there as well.